5:01 right now, breaking overnight. 2 people are in the hospital after a shooting in southeast Albuquerque.
Police say the details are very limited at this time, but we do know that it happened at a local gas station at San Mateo and Catherine. That's where we find News 13's Catherine Mazzone. She joins us with the very latest. Good morning, Catherine.
Good morning, Crystal. Now, it's a very different scene from just a few hours ago. If you take a look behind me, customers coming in and out of this 7-Eleven like nothing ever happened. But like I said, very different scene early on. Here's what we know so far. Police say they got the call around 12:15 this morning. When they arrived on scene, they say 2 men were shot, one of whom is an employee at this 7-Eleven. But this wasn't an attempted robbery. APD says 2 people were arguing inside the store, and it continued when they left. An employee saw it and walked outside to try to break it up. Police say that's when one of the men arguing fired shots, hitting both the clerk and the other man that he was arguing with. Now, the 2 victims are in stable condition at the hospital right now, but at this time, officers aren't releasing their names for the safety of them and the safety of their families. Police say they do have a person of interest that they'll be looking into. Back to you.
Now, police ask anyone who may have seen something to call them immediately. You can call 242 COPS. Of course, we will continue to follow this story and bring you any new details we get into our newsroom as soon as it comes in. You can also continue to follow the story online at KRQE.com.
The man accused of driving drunk and killing a prominent businessman on his bike is booked in MDC this morning.
Sir, were you drunk at the time of the crash?
No, ma'am.
That's how 25-year-old Coulter Cook responded to us. Police say he slammed his car into Reed Bart Rutledge, dragging and killing him. News 13 has just obtained Cook's mugshot. It happened inside the gates of the Tan Juan community around 1 yesterday afternoon. Cell phone video from inside the community shows APD investigating that crash. APD says Rutledge was riding his bicycle when Cook came down the street, bouncing off curbs and driving erratically.
Hit Mr. Rutledge, unfortunately drug him some distance, never even hit the brakes. It appears Mr. Rutledge never had a chance.
Police say that Cook refused a breathalyzer test, so they had to get a warrant to draw his blood. It's still unclear this morning if the person accused of hitting an 80-year-old with their car will be charged. At last check, that person is in critical condition after being hit on the west side on Friday night. It happened near Iliff and Coors. No names have been released so far.
This morning, police in Santa Fe are continuing to their search for this man before he strikes again. They say he robbed the Dollar Mart on Airport Road with a gun in hand Friday night. You can see it right there. He's being described as a husky man between 5'6" to 5'9", around 200 pounds. His face was covered and he wore a black beanie.
A man charged in a deadly home invasion of an MMA fighter is now indicted in a separate case. The Las Cruces Sun News reports a grand jury indicted 21-year-old Nathan Avalos early last week for aggravated assault and battery. According to the indictment, Avalos allegedly beat up his girlfriend. Authorities say he was one of 4 men charged with invading the home of Joe Torres. One of Avalos' accomplices was stabbed during that ordeal and died.
We turn now to news out of Washington, D.C. this morning, where U.S. officials are working out the final details on reopening its embassy in Cuba today. This comes after U.S. officials have fully restored diplomatic ties with Cuba. Later today, Cuban officials will reopen their embassy in Washington. The Cuban flag is already flying once again in the lobby of the State Department. It will mark the first time in 54 years that the embassy is operational. Relations between the 2 former Cold War foes have begun to normalize after President Obama announced the easing of restrictions that was late last year.
5:05 and new facts this morning about a man accused of killing 2 women and 3 girls in California. Police say 30-year-old Martin Martinez is the father of one of the victims. He's now been booked on suspicion of murder. All of the victims are related, and the children's ages range from 6 months to 6 years old. They have not released a motive or cause of death.
More fallout for Donald Trump this morning. Some Republican leaders are saying the GOP presidential candidate is not fit to be commander-in-chief after controversial comments he made about John McCain on Saturday.
He's not a war hero.
He's a war hero.
He's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
Florida Senator Marco Rubio called the comments offensive and ridiculous. Meanwhile, Rick Perry says he does not believe Trump has the character or the temperament to be president. Trump is holding fast, though, saying McCain has not done enough for the country's veterans. A McCain spokesman said the senator had no comment on Trump's remarks.
Other presidential candidates are also making the rounds, answering questions. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker says he does not have an opinion on every single issue, including whether the Boy Scouts should allow gay troop leaders. CNN asked the Republican candidate if he thinks being gay is a choice.
Oh, I mean, I think that's not even an issue for me to be involved in. The bottom line is I'm going to stand up and work hard for every American, regardless of who they are, no matter where they come from, no matter what their background.
During that same interview, Walker says policy on allowing gay Boy Scout leaders should be up to the organization.
We turn now to a new article in Vanity Fair. Rachel Dolezal says she's lost her job and many of her friends since her parents outed her as being born white. The former head of the Spokane NAACP chapter says she's no longer confused about who she is and that her black identity is not a costume. Dolezal stepped down from her post at the Spokane chapter after her parents, both white, said she was not being truthful about her face. Dolezal says since the controversy and national attention, she has not been working and does not have much money.
A lot of people are talking about this video this morning. Watch your screen if you got a moment here. A championship surfer had some heart-stopping moments on Sunday when he fought off a shark attack during a competition in South Africa. This was all captured on live TV. You can see two sharks actually circling Mick Fanning. They knocked him off his board. He was not hurt. That's the good news here. He was able to get away. That whole competition was canceled, though. Fanning and his competitor agreed to share second place. It's shocking, isn't it?
Absolutely, and that had to be the toughest competition he has faced in the waters.
I know, and he ended up pulling away and getting away. They were able to pull him out of the water quickly, and boy,
good for him that he kept fighting, though.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
A lot of people were sharing it all over social media.
That is terrifying.
Breaking overnight, 2 people are in the hospital after a shooting in southeast Albuquerque.
Yeah, police say at this time details are very limited, but they tell us it did happen at a local gas station on San Mateo and Catherine. That's where you find News 13's Catherine Mazzone with the latest details. Good morning, Catherine.
Good morning, Crystal. As you mentioned, it did happen at this 7-Eleven you see behind me. One of the employees was shot in an altercation between 2 other people. Now, it doesn't look like much now, but several hours ago it was a much different scene. Here's what we know so far. Police say they got the call at around 12:15 this morning. When they arrived, they say 2 men were shot, one of whom, as I said, is an employee at this business. But this wasn't an attempted robbery, as you might think. APD says 2 people were arguing inside the store, and it continued when they left. An employee saw it and walked outside to break it up. But police say that's when one of the men arguing fired shots, hitting both the clerk and the other man he was arguing with. Now, the 2 victims are, as you said earlier, in the hospital at this time. Officers aren't releasing their names due to protecting their families and the victims themselves. The police say they do, however, have a person of interest in this shooting. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Catherine. Police ask anyone who may have seen something to call them immediately at 242 COPS. Of course, we will stay on top of the story and bring you the latest as it does come into our newsroom. You can also continue to follow the story online at KRQE.com.
Developing this morning, rallies over the removal of the Confederate flag. People on both sides of the issue went head-to-head on Saturday in South Carolina. Both the KKK and the Black Panthers held rallies on the Capitol steps in Columbia. At one point, one of the groups ripped up a Confederate flag. Law enforcement officials eventually shut down the rally an hour early to disperse the crowd of nearly 2,000 people. 5:34 this morning, a group of state lawmakers and community leaders in New Mexico are calling for the removal of several Confederate symbols from an Albuquerque landmark. Old Town Plaza is full of references to the Confederacy, including plaques and cannons. The first Confederate flag, used before the one that we're most familiar with, even flies above that. Members of the group say they believe that display sends a bad message.
To allow these monuments to be here gives a continuation to the ideology of white supremacy. And that's offensive and an insult to not only the African American community, but all members of the community.
And members of the group say they believe city leaders can remove those items if they want to. News 13 reached out to the Cultural Services Department, but we did not hear back.
We turn out to this new this morning. The family of a Texas woman found dead inside her jail cell days after her arrest is now seeking an independent autopsy. Sources close to the family report that they should have results within the next 48 to 72 hours. Sandra Bland was arrested earlier this month after police say she became uncooperative during a traffic stop for failing to signal a lane change. She was still in jail Monday awaiting bond when she was found dead. Authorities say the 28-year-old hanged herself, but her family questions that account. She was in Texas interviewing for a job at Texas A&M. We turn out to this happening today. Imagine having your bank closed for weeks. Finally, some relief in Greece this morning. Banks there will reopen today after being closed for 3 weeks, but there will still be some restrictions like withdrawal limits. Greeks can only withdraw $65 per day for now. Many goods and services will likely cost a lot more as a result in value-added tax that was approved by the parliament on Tuesday.
Listen to this. If your morning drive takes you along Indian School near America's Parkway, you might want to find another route. Crews are working to repair a massive sinkhole that swallowed an SUV on Saturday. The driver was able to get out of the vehicle safely. The Water Utility Authority is now warning people in that area that they might experience water outages, even low pressure, while they work to repair all that.
Developing this morning, a New Mexico Police Department will soon crack down on its own officers for distracted driving. The Farmington Daily Times reports that new software is now installed in most of the officers' cars. It was done just this past month. The department says the software is designed to disable a patrol car's computers if the vehicle goes past 20 miles per hour, so an officer can no longer type and drive.
One of 2 auto burglars caught after police tracked them down through GPS is also locked up this morning. According to a criminal complaint, Bobby Dominguez and Craig Black were seen on surveillance video breaking into B&D Electrics in southeast Albuquerque. The pair, police say, hooked up a cement mixer to a truck and then drove away. APD used GPS in that truck to track the pair to a nearby home and arrested them. In court, Dominguez was set free. Police estimate the two were found with close to $100,000 worth of stolen items.
New this morning, a major breakthrough for a potentially deadly virus could come from New Mexico now that some local students are stepping in to help researchers. The hantavirus affects more people from New Mexico than anywhere else. As part of Vanderbilt University's program, 4 local students are helping prominent doctors get blood samples from survivors for a clinical trial intended to develop treatments. Blood collected from hantavirus survivors in northern New Mexico could give the researchers a better understanding of this disease. The disease is commonly spread through contact with infected mice.
We're just weeks away now from the start of school in Albuquerque, and APS is hiring. Right now, there are more than 330 openings for teachers. About 100 of those are for special ed teachers. Those numbers are similar to what the district saw this same time last year. APS says districts across the country are struggling to fill the special ed positions because there are so many requirements associated with that. As for the other openings, APS says it believes it can fill most of those before school starts. If you're interested in applying, APS is holding a job fair next week. You can read more on the KRQE News app. Happening today, the United Nations Security Council will vote on a resolution endorsing the Iran nuclear deal.
And this comes on the very same day that Congress back here at home will formally begin to examine this agreement. Foreign ministers with the European Union want the resolution adopted before their discussion on the Iran deal later this afternoon. Lawmakers in Washington will have 60 days to review the deal, and some Republicans are already vowing to reject it. Last week, the president said he would veto Congress's plan to derail the deal.
New video this morning shows a woman being rescued from a burning car in Oregon. It happened after that woman hit a gas pump at a Chevron, and then that burst into flames. And that's when 2 brothers came to her rescue. Through smoke, through intense heat, one of them broke the window with his bare hand and pulled her to safety. Watch this video here. Moments later, that car was fully engulfed with flames. She was said to be all right. Later, after she kind of collected her thoughts, she thanked him. Boy, he was thinking quickly.
Yeah, and the hero said he really honestly didn't even think twice about it. Just punched the window right out and pulled her out.